Back to our top story this hour and a stunning show of military strength by Israel, striking Iran with 330 munitions over 100 sites, dropped by 200 fighter jets, according to Israel's military spokesman. Iran has since responded, directing 100 drones toward Israel. And joining us now, NBC News senior national security correspondent Courtney Kube. Courtney, we just laid out some of those details from last night's attack. What does all this suggest about Israel's military capabilities, and how sophisticated are their weapon systems and their spy networks?
Yeah, remember, Anna, back in October, the Israelis took a series of pretty extreme strikes in Iran as well. In that case, they were able to basically dismantle or disable Iran's strategic air defense systems, their S-300s. So Israel has already shown the ability to take strikes deep inside Iran and to cripple some of their critical systems. Now, what I was really struck by as last night unfolded and as the hours have gone by and we've learned more and more about these Israeli strikes is not just the number that you just laid out there or the targets, which are clearly surrounding the Iranian nuclear program. That includes both sites and individuals who they were going after. But I am really struck by the fact that the Israelis are acknowledging that this is part of a longer-term campaign, upwards of 2 weeks. Anna, that suggests to me that this is a real effort to do something the Israelis have been talking about for years, and that is not to disable or not to, in some way, slow down the Iranian nuclear program. But the goal here is ultimately to destroy their program altogether. And I think the Israelis think, because of a number of other factors that are going on right now, it seems they think this is the time that they might actually be able to do it. That's what I'm seeing unfold as this goes on.
So, Courtney, do we know how damaged Iran's nuclear facilities are and just sort of the state of Iran's capabilities, how they'll be able to, if they'll be able to respond in any kind of reciprocal way?
So they haven't gone after all of the facilities. So it's definitely not the case that Iran's nuclear capabilities or their program itself is disabled at this point. But it's definitely damaged from what happened last night. Iran has, we hear so much about their nuclear program, but Iran has an advanced and extensive ballistic missile program as well. Don't forget about that. They also have drones. They've already started firing some of those off at the Israelis. Iran will have the ability to respond. The question is, are they concerned about responding what they may get back in return?
All right, Courtney Kube, thank you very much for joining us with your reporting. And also with us now is Ambassador Mark Ginsburg, former presidential Middle East advisor and former U.S. ambassador to Morocco. Ambassador, always great to have you with us. We've seen Iran begin to launch some retaliatory strikes. What are your biggest concerns this morning?
Oh, they're threefold, Anna. First of all, of course, is Iran going to retaliate either directly against Israel with its reserves of ballistic missiles? Number two, will Iran launch terrorist attacks against the United States and Israeli interests around the world? And number three, if the regime feels even more threatened as a result of the new or next round of Israeli attacks, will it try to choke off oil supplies through the Straits of Hormuz and cause an international financial crisis?
So those are all major impacts, obviously, not just on these two individual countries, but really the region more broadly around the world when you talk about the oil impacts. What is your sense of Israel's calculation? Why now, especially given that President Trump had been saying, please hold off, we're in the middle of these Iran nuclear negotiations?
And I've been talking to my friends in Israel overnight. As you may recall, I was raised there, and I maintain extensive ties to its intelligence operatives. Israel came to the conclusion that over the last 2 weeks, Iran not only had decided to accelerate uranium enrichment way beyond what it had already assured the United States it was not, number one, and number two, it had reached a threshold of being able to weaponize the uranium that it had achieved. It was literally only 3 to 5 days away from being able to do what everyone said it was within weeks of doing, but was going to proceed while it was trying to create the impression that it was negotiating in good faith with the United States.
How far is Israel planning to take this fight? At what point will we see them say, okay, we're done?
That's a hard question, and I'll tell you why. Israel does not have fighter bombers. It has an excellent air force. But in order to really penetrate and do the severe damage to all of the 10 sites in which Iran is operating in its nuclear enrichment programs, it doesn't have the bunker busting capacity that at least it is needed. It's not that the United States or the Trump administration may not have wanted to provide it. Israel doesn't have an Air Force capacity, that is bombers, to be able to drop those bombs. So that's one of the reasons why Israel is going to keep trying to use its Air Force to pulverize these sites inch by inch, whereas it would have been probably able to take out these sites had it had fighter bombers to do so in a first strike.
Ambassador Mark Ginsburg, really appreciate your insights. Thank you very much for taking the time this morning.